Shaddai, El Shaddai, El Elyon Adonai. Eres el mismo de ayer, en tu nombre hay poder.
I'm so glad that you've come, and I never cease to give thanks for your hunger for the Lord that we find in His Word. You know, that's the measure of how well a church is doing, not how loud the worship is or how many people show up for church, but how many people are engaged in Bible study. That's your indicator right there. So you're the ones that make me really happy right there. Thank you. I don't stress over you as much as I probably do with others. And we've got 2 chapters to cover, so we've got a long way to go, and so I think we should go ahead and get started. So would you join with me in prayer? Lord God, we thank you so much that you loved your people and that out of your grace you reached down to them and delivered them from every oppression and affliction, even as you have delivered us from the oppression and the affliction of sin, death, and the devil. We thank you, Lord, for that grace that was shown to your people Israel in time after time and now has been shown also unto us. Grant to us, Lord, by your Spirit and by the power of your grace working within us, to rise up and to stand for you, to be willing to fight where we need to fight against all the ancient foes and enemies. We pray, O God, that Christ will be glorified and honored in our lives, that he, the great deliverer, the true and final judge, will be at work in our hearts and lives, and grant us to be transformed, to be more like him. In his name we pray. Amen. Amen. All right, let's do, I'm first going to do chapter 4, so let me just read through that if that's okay. And then we're going to go back and take a look at it. So read through it with me if you can. Just follow along as I'm reading. So again, the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord, now that Ehud was dead. So the Lord sold them into the hands of Jabin, king of Canaan, who reigned in Hatzor. Sisera, the commander of his army, was based in Harosheth Hagoyim, because he had 900 chariots fitted with iron and had cruelly oppressed the Israelites for 20 years. They cried to the Lord for help. Now Deborah, a prophet, the wife of Lapidoth, was leading Israel at that time. She held court under the palm of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim, and the Israelites went up to her to have their disputes decided. She sent for Barak, son of Abinoam, from Kadesh in Naphtali, and said to him, "The Lord, the God of Israel, commands you, go take with you 10,000 men of Naphtali and Zebulun, and lead them up to Mount Tabor. I will lead Sisera, the commander of Jabin's army, and his chariots and his troops to the Kishon River, and give him into your hands." Barak said to her, "If you go with me, I will go, but if you don't go with me, I won't go." "Certainly I will go with you," said Deborah, "but because of the course you are taking, the honor will not be yours, for the Lord will deliver Sisera into the hands of a woman." So Deborah went with Barak to Kadesh. There Barak summoned Zebulun and Naphtali, and 10,000 men went up under his command. Deborah also went up with him. Now Heber the Kenite had left the other Kenites, the descendants of Hobab, Moses' brother-in-law, and pitched his tent by the great tree Zaananim near Kadesh. When they told Sisera that Barak, son of Abinoam, had gone up to Mount Tabor, Sisera summoned from Harosheth Hagoyim to the Kishon River all his men and his 900 chariots fitted with iron. Then Deborah said to Barak, "Go, this is the day the Lord has given Sisera into your hands. Has not the Lord gone ahead of you?" So Barak went down Mount Tabor with 10,000 men following him. At Barak's advance, the Lord routed Sisera and all his chariots and army by the sword. And Sisera got down from his chariot and fled on foot. Barak pursued the chariots and army as far as Harosheth Hagoyim, and all Sisera's troops fell by the sword. Not a man was left. Sisera, meanwhile, fled on foot to the tent of Jael. the wife of Heber the Kenite, because there was an alliance between Jabin, king of Hazor, and the family of Heber the Kenite. Jael went out to meet Sisera and said to him, "Come, my lord, come right in, don't be afraid." So he entered her tent, and she covered him with a blanket. "I'm thirsty," he said. "Please give me some water." She opened a skin of milk, gave him a drink, and covered him up. "Stand in the doorway of the tent," he told her. "If someone comes by and asks you, 'Is anyone in there?' say no." But Jael, Heber's wife, picked up a tent peg and a hammer and went quietly to him while he lay fast asleep, exhausted. She drove the peg through his temple into the ground, and he died. Just then Barak came by in pursuit of Sisera, and Jael went out to meet him. "Come," she said, "I will show you the man you're looking for." So he went in with her, and there lay Sisera with the tent peg through his temple, dead. On that day God subdued Jabin, king of Canaan, before the Israelites, and the hand of the Israelites pressed harder and harder against Jabin, king of Canaan, until they destroyed him. All right. Interesting story, huh? Fun stuff. Now, all right, let's just start out. Where do you see the cycle? We've talked the last 2 weeks about the cycle in the book of Judges. Help identify for me the cycle in this story.
Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord.
Very first verse, yes, thank you. The Israelites did evil. So remember, they had peace during the time of Ehud, but after Ehud died, now here they are doing evil in the eyes of the Lord. It just says it so matter-of-factly, like, and this is what they did. Yet again, here we go. There's no glitz and glamour even to it. It's just thrown right out there. All right, what next?
So the Lord sold them into the hands of Jabin, the king of Canaan. But what sold? He sold them?
He sold them.
Yeah. Does that mean
An
he
interesting
got
language.
something in return? You know, I mean, it's that's what it implies. There's a deal.
Yeah, I don't know that there's a transaction going on. I don't know that that's the point of it. But it is interesting language, isn't it?
Yeah.
He sold them. The way you would sell something precious, like you're getting rid of it.
Oh, donated.
Yeah.
All right, what's the next thing?
They cried for help, and Deborah got sent.
Yeah, they cry for help. Now, we've said before, does that mean they're repenting of their sins? No. It just means they're going, "Oh, my life stinks, God, it's terrible." And so what does God do? He raises up a judge. And in this case, who is the judge? Deborah, yeah, very interesting. The only woman judge in the story. And then what does God do? Yeah, he delivers them from the oppressor. The king of Canaan is destroyed in battle and ongoing defeats until he's too weak and can't control them anymore. And then they have peace again. That we don't see in this chapter. We'll see at the end of the next chapter. So there you see the cycle. All right, now let me ask you this. Suppose you were going to make a movie of the story, Deborah. You were the screenwriter for this thing. What would be all the stuff you would want to put in your movie? What kinds of things would make it really exciting to the audiences of today? What would make your kids want to go to the movie and say, "Oh, we got to see that, Deborah"?
Pounding the peg into the guy's head.
Yeah, you want to see that? Blood and ball. Very interesting, isn't it? So how did Ehud kill Eglon? Yeah, he had that little left-handed sword that he stuck into him, and now here we have and how did Shamgar kill the Philistines?
With a goat.
With an ox goad.
That's it.
And now we have the tent peg. Yeah, so you've got all these different kinds of weapons and stories about how God is defeating these enemies. Very good. What else would you want to see?
All those chariots.
Yeah, you want to see the battle scenes, right? I want to see the warfare. I want to see all the fighting and then how Barak wins. That would be exciting. Very little about that actually in this. Very little. We're going to take a look at it in a few moments. Something that I find really neat in this
I think
text.
this movie would be rated R.
Would be rated R, might be, yeah, for violence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sadly.
All right. Here's what I want you to do for a moment, is look at how the story, we just read through the story. And if you just read through it the first time, you go, oh, boy, that's an interesting story. But I want you to see how carefully constructed this story is. How much effort and work went into the way that this is put together that helps to convey meaning. Things that you might not pick up on the very first time that you read through it. So in order to do that, what I did was I color-coded some sections. Did you notice that as we read it? They're different colors. And I want you to see something in these color codes. So look at the top, the first 3 verses. What color is that?
Gold.
Gray, gold, grayish, green, or something, I don't know. Yeah, I'm not an artist, you know. Look at what's happening in those 3 verses. You have the Lord selling the Israelites into the hands of Jabin. Now go down to the very bottom, the end of the chapter, verses 23 and 24. So at the beginning, the Lord is selling the Israelites into the hand of the Canaanites. But look at the end. Now God subdued Jabin, king of Canaan, before the Israelites, and the hand of the Israelites pressed harder and harder against Jabin. Now you've got the Lord selling out the Canaanites into the hands of the Israelites, right? Do you see that? Now look at the first blue section there, verses 4 through 9. You have the story there of this woman, Deborah. And you know what's very interesting, I think? Deborah sends for Barak. Some people have wondered, I think, if Barak wasn't the judge and Deborah was just a prophetess that got... But it seems to me that Deborah is the judge here. Pastor Maurice asked a question last week. Did the judges judge in a way that we would find similar to our judges today? And I wasn't fully sure of the answer. I think when we'll look later, for example, at Samson, we aren't seeing much of that. But here for Deborah, we are kind of seeing that, aren't we? Look at verse 5. She held court under the palm of Deborah. And so what was she doing? Holding court. And she was judging between matters of disputes, right? Yeah. He sold me 2 horses, but one of them had a bad leg. And well, the horse's leg was fine when I sold it to you. All right, we're going to see Deborah, and we're going to have her settle this. So here's this woman, Deborah, and so she seems to be the judge, and then who is Barak?
I just had to say it.
That was fantastic.
Barak just seems to be like a general. He just seems to be a leader that is called upon by Deborah to be the general. So he's not the judge. And look at what's interesting in verse 8. He says, if she tells him the Lord is commanding you to do this, and the Lord is going to deliver your enemies into your hands. But Barak says, well, I won't go unless you go. Isn't that good? That's how Dawn and I are when we have to return something to the store. I'm too embarrassed to go to the sales lady and say, I need to return this. So honey, would you return this? Braver than that. But look at what Deborah says. Of course I'll go with you, but because of the course you are taking, the honor will not be yours. So he's going to be the general, but because he is afraid to step out in response to the Lord's going to give the honor to someone else. And who's he going to give the honor to? A woman. Now, without digging into it too much, what is the feeling of women back in the days of the judges.
Weren't they like second-class citizens?
In some respects, yes. So here's Deborah. Now she's a judge, and she's judging Israel. She's a recognized prophetess. But overall, the idea back then is women don't play the same prominent roles. And so to be killed in battle by a woman, that's like a really bad thing, right? So the Sisera is going to end up being killed by a woman. Later on, we're going to read the story of Gideon's son, and Gideon's son too gets killed by a woman. He's besieging a tower, and she throws a stone down, and the stone, and so this guy is killed by a woman. And it's kind of presented in such a way as though to say, yeah, what a disgraceful end, for this fellow, that a woman killed him. So a woman is going to get the honor here. At this point in the story, though, what woman do you think that might be?
Deborah.
You think it's going to be Deborah, but that's not who it is. Look down at the second blue section, the second section from the end. So you see how these are matched opposite each other? And that is the section of Yael, or Jael, I'll just call her, who is the wife of this fellow Heber, and she's the one that ends up killing Sisera. Very, very interesting, isn't it? Look at the red section, verses 10 through 13. So there Barak summons Zebulun and Naphtali. Who is that?
Barak was the general.
Those are tribes. Those are 2 of the 12 tribes. So this is not involving all of Israel. It's just involving the tribes that are kind of settled up in the north. So that's the picture that we have here, the Canaanites. That's where they're oppressing. And if you look at the map there, you can see Zebulun and Naphtali in the green. Those kind of show the regions where they settled. So he's summoning them, 10,000 men. But look at verse 13. Sisera, he's kind of like Jabin's Darth Vader, right? He's the big shot running the army there. He summons from Harosheth Hagoyim all his men and his 900 chariots. Now go down to the second red section, which is second half of verse 14 through 16. Do you see that? So in the first red section, Barak summoned and Sisera summoned. In this section, Barak goes down and Sisera goes down. So do you see the similarity there and what's going on? These red sections are talking about Barak and Sisera and matching up what they're doing together. And that leaves only one section, which is just a half a verse right in the middle, the green section. Then Deborah said to Barak, "Go, this is the day the Lord has given Sisera into your hands. Has not the Lord gone ahead of you?" Now, when the scriptures are structured this way, it has a certain effect. You may not catch it right away, but the more you look at it, the more it'll stand out to you. Suppose you build a house, and you want to landscape your house. So what do?
Call you.
You put a big tree on this corner, and you put a big tree on this corner, and then you put some smaller trees on this side and some smaller trees on this side, and you put some flowers on this side of the entranceway and some flowers on this side of the entranceway. What's all that doing by matching, having opposite ends and one center? Yeah, there's one center there, and it attracts focus on what's in the middle, what's in the center. So by structuring the chapter this way, and I hope you can see that clear structure. Now, someone nodded their head yes, so I know I'm making connection here, right? It highlights this green section. What's important about this? This is the day the Lord has given Sisera into your hands. Has not the Lord gone ahead of you? The emphasis is on the work and activity of God. Do a quick scan in here. Scan the whole chapter. What are all the things that the Lord says or does? The Lord is capitalized there, meaning those are translations of the proper name for God. So just scan through there and see those quick right away. What are the things God does? Okay, the Lord sells them, verse 2. What else?
He commands them.
Yeah, he commands. Barak, very good. Verse 6. Good. What else?
He delivers Sisera.
Yeah, he delivers. Right, he delivers Sisera. Good. What else? Yeah, where do you see that? Yes. Yeah, and then verse 23 toward the end, God delivers or subdues Jabin. So the things that God is saying and doing in this section, what does it tell you about God?
Keeps his promise, like in the green part there.
Yes. Yes.
He did what he said he was gonna do.
He does
And
what
he's
he-
also a leader in the green part too.
Yes.
Even if it's not what we want.
Yeah.
He went ahead of him.
He goes ahead of them, right? He's a God of action. He's not a wimpy God. He's an active God a God of might, a God of strength that demonstrates his might and his strength. Now let me just, I hope we have time to do this. Let me just show you a little bit of what's happening here, okay? So look at that map. Now, this is going to be difficult for you, so you really got to, you can't fall asleep on this one. You got to really look at this map. And this is kind of a funny map too, because most maps are kind of looking straight on from the south. This map in some ways really is almost a little bit three-dimensional. You're kind of looking from this, a little bit from the southeast, so it can throw you off just a little bit. But I want you to see some things here. So do you see Hatzor on the far right side of the map, about halfway down? You see the city of Hatzor. Do you see that? And so who was headquartered there from the story? Jabin. That's where Jabin was. Jabin's the king of the Canaanites. He's the head bad guy. Okay, now go to the lower left corner of the map and go up about an inch, and there you see Haraset Hagoyim. Do you see that? I think scholars, as I understand it, are not 100% sure that that's what it is or where it is, but that's what we think. So there's a little city there, and who was headquartered there? Sisera. And what did he have there? Available and at his disposal for warfare. Yeah, 900 iron chariots. How many iron chariots do the Israelites have?
None.
Yeah, no, they never, in fact, Israelites didn't really use chariots for a long time after this. Now, just to the right of Harset Hagoyim, at an angle, you see there a topographical note, the plain of Megiddo. You see the plain of Megiddo?
Yeah.
Somebody nods like,
Yeah,
you can see that?
in red.
Yeah, what's the other common name in the Bible for the plain of Megiddo? What do we often call that? That's Armageddon.
Really?
Armageddon.
Interesting.
So you can see that little mountain range that just kind of cuts the lower left corner. And then you can see a big mountain range kind of about the center of the map and then veering off more to the northeast. And that huge plain right in the middle, a flat spot between the mountains, that's the plain of Armageddon. That's where Napoleon is supposedly looked upon when he visited the Middle East, and he said, wow, the armies of the world could maneuver on here. There's this giant plain, and you could picture Napoleon with these big armies moving them all around and manipulating. Huge open area, but surrounded by mountains on the sides. Now, if you are the Canaanites, where are you going to drive your chariots? They drive on the plains. You can't take chariots up in the mountains. That doesn't work. So if you're the Israelites, where do you go hide? You hide up in the mountains. The Canaanites control the valley. They control the plain, which, by the way, is also where the best produce is going to be, resources, right? So what is the benefit of having these iron chariots in a battle? You've got to have a little bit of a sense of understanding of how ancient battles went. Has anybody seen Braveheart?
Yeah.
So when the two armies meet in Braveheart, what do? They go charging, "Ah!" and you hear this, and at the end of the battle, what's the, 3/4 of the guys are dead, and the rest are all bleeding, and they're going, "Oh, we won." You would not sell your life so cheaply if you were involved in an ancient battle. I got news for you. Even 3,000 years ago, people didn't just risk their lives very easily. They didn't want to die in battles. So they stayed tight together, they stayed close, and even in individual battle, right? In an individual battle, what do we like on TV? We like where guys come together and they're doing this. What did they more commonly do? They had long weapons. And they did this, trying to keep each other from this stuff. And so the armies in ancient days, what I've read is that they were more like giant shoving matches. This would come forward a little bit, and they'd skirmish a little, and this would back up, and then they'd get some reinforcements, and they'd skirmish a little, and this group would back up, and this would come from over here, and now this one would back up, and 9/10 of the casualties in ancient battles would happen when one side finally broke and ran away. When you're doing this, but when one side finally turns around and starts to run, that's when you get them, right? So you can see how chariots would change the whole scope of an ancient battle. Chariots are like your rapid reaction force. So you got your two armies like this. But wherever the Israelite army looks like it might start doing better, what can the Canaanite army, what can Sisera do really fast? Bring the chariots up. Yeah, so you can never get the edge if you're fighting against these chariots. They're always going to be able to come to wherever they're most needed in the battle. And if you're fighting on a chariot, you have another advantage too. You're up high, right? Yeah. In any battle, who's got the advantage? The taller guy, right? Because it's easier to do this than it is to do this. So you got a guy up on a chariot thrusting down, and you got a guy standing on the ground at the chariot thrusting up. You don't want to do that very much. So the guy that's fighting the chariot's the guy that's going to run. Now you got the slaughter, right?
You also got the advantage of the horses and fitted chariots. What were they fitted with? Were they fitted with things on the wheels?
You've
They were
seen
iron?
like in the slicers in Ben-Hur and that sort of thing. But as I understand it, that was not the case. It was not so much that they could just mow people down and they had something like that. At least not at that time. Their main advantage was speed and elevation. A lot of times somebody would drive the chariot and another one would be the fighting man in the chariot. He was the guy that...
But if you saw those horses coming, you're not going to just stand there, so you take off.
Yeah, it's a scary thing. So if you're down in the plains and you're the Israelites, you're going to lose. So where does Barak gather up his forces? Mount Tabor or Tabor. Now, if you've ever, I wish I would have put a picture in here of it. I have seen Mount Tabor when I was in Israel, and I wish I had a picture to show you. It's not in a mountain range per se. It's not like all kinds of mountains. And oh, by the way, this one's Mount Tabor, kind of like Mount Everest or Mount McKinley or something. It's like this mountain that's all by itself in the middle of this giant plain. So if the Israelites go up to the top of this mountain, they can set their camp. And they're pretty safe, right? Because now the advantage of the chariots is lost. The chariots can't go up the mountain and win. You just throw rocks down or whatever you're going to. But if your army at the top of the mountain comes down, now the chariots all of a sudden change the battle. Everything's different, right? Look at on your maps. You see in the middle, down at the bottom, the green for Issachar, one of the tribes of Israel, where Issachar dwelt. And right above that is Chisloth Tabor. As nearly as I can tell, it's hard sometimes comparing different maps, but I think that's right about the area where Mount Tabor is. It's right about there. So you can imagine Barak gathers his 10,000 men, and they all go up to that mountain. So straight to the west of that, Sisera goes and gets his army and his 900 chariots and comes back. And now what happens? Barak comes down with his army, and all we know from this story is that the Lord goes ahead of them and delivers into their hands. Well, how did that happen? What happened? I'm going to give you a little insight here we will never finish all this. Oh, this is such a shame. But let's skip to the next chapter for a second. So turn to page. Chapter 5 is the song of Deborah. This is the song of victory that she sings after the battle is over. But I want you just for a moment to look at verses 4 and 5. Verses 4 and 5. When you, Lord, went out from Seir, when you marched from the land of Edom, the earth shook, the heavens poured, the clouds poured down water. The mountains quaked before the Lord, the one of Sinai before the Lord, the God of Israel. Now go back to your map for a moment. Now where is Edom and Seir? They're not on this map. They would be way, way to the south of where this map is. So some scholars think it's referring to the route that the Israelites took when they came into Canaan. That makes less sense to me. What makes a lot more sense is that when it says the Lord went before them, in the green passage we read, that God is the one who's come from Edom and Seir, the God who thundered at Mount Sinai. So on your map, you look at that valley. From where do the storms normally come? If it's going to rain, where does rain come from? From the west, from the Mediterranean. The moist air coming off the Mediterranean hits the mountain peaks and the cool air rising, and that's what brings rain. Later on, there's this great story about Elijah, where exactly that happens. The rain comes from the west. Why would rain come from the east? The east is a desert. Rain doesn't come off of the desert. But on this occasion, where might the rain have come from? It comes from the south and the east. So the Lord does this miracle by bringing this thunderstorm full of rain from the east into the valley here. So just as the Israelites march down, it starts to pour rain. And where do they go? Look about halfway down your map. On the left side, and there you see the river Kishon. The river Kishon. You see it? And the river Kishon, how far does it go? How far do you see that little blue line? Not too far. Because it's not that big a river. But what would happen is when you get the big rains, then bodies are like dry riverbeds that only fill up with rain and flow, or only flow when it rains. So this heavy rain comes down, and now all of a sudden the chariots of the Canaanites are of no advantage. What happens to the chariots when it's pouring down rain in a valley?
Stuck in the mud.
Exactly, the wheels are sinking in the mud. They get stuck, and so they're fleeing back toward Harosheth Hagoyim, back toward the river Kishon, and they're being pursued by the Israelites. So how did God go before the Israelites and deliver them? He sent this miraculous thunderstorm, the God who thundered at Mount Sinai. It's not in the text here, but I find the irony of it seems almost inescapable to me. Who did the Israelites and the Canaanites worship that brought about this problem in the first place? We didn't see it here, but in the chapter before, they used to worship Baal. What kind of God was Baal?
The thunderstorm and rain.
Yeah, the thunderstorm and rain God. And so here, they worship this thunderstorm and rain God, Baal, but now God, the true God, who thundered at Mount Sinai, comes in with thunderstorm and rain from the opposite side. And he destroys the Canaanite army, and they have to flee, and they run away. So Sisera has to get down off his chariot, and he has to run on foot. So you can see the path he took, right? Where's he trying to go? His home, Harosheth HaGoyim, is going to be destroyed. That's where the Israelites are headed. So where's he going to go? He's going to try to get back to Jabin in Hatzor, right? So he can't cut across the mountains. He goes up north. You can see where the land is a little more flat along the Mediterranean there. And then at some point he has to cut back east, and he goes past the town of Kedesh. Do you see where Kedesh is in the upper right of your map? And he's on his way from Kedesh back down probably to Hatzor, right? Where he's at least going to be temporarily safe, get back in with Jabin, the king. Meanwhile, he's at Kedesh. He's being pursued and chased by Barak. And who lives at Kedesh? Well, this fellow named Heber, the Kenite. So who is Heber the Kenite? Well, he is a descendant of Moses' brother-in-law. So remember, Moses married a woman, Zipporah, and what country was she from? She was a Midianite. So Moses married into this family that wasn't Israeli. They weren't Jewish, I should say. And the Kenites settled far to the south, but we had that little note in chapter 4, verse 11, about Heber the Kenite had left the other Kenites and had pitched his tent by the great tree in Zaananim near Kedesh. So now here's Sisera trying to get back to safety, and he's coming past Kedesh, and here he sees the wife of Heber in the tent. And so the Kenites were not Jewish, so they had formed an alliance with the Canaanites. So he's thinking, I'm safe. This is one of the people that's in alliance with my master. He feels like now he's reached safety. He's going to hide in her tent. So he hides in her tent, and what happens? While he's sleeping, he asks for water. What does she give him instead?
Milk.
Yeah. What does some nice warm milk do when you're really tired, right? Yeah, he's just out, right? And she comes with this tent peg. And so who becomes the hero of the story? Who's the one that destroys Sisera? Jael. Yeah. And so it's a dramatic story of God's deliverance in a very powerful way. We're going to run out of time. Flip to the next page so we can at least try to do some of this. I broke this down into colors as well. I think because for the sake of time, let me just skip through the green section. Let's go to the purple section. So this is the song of Deborah after they've experienced their victory. Look what she says there in the purple. Then the people of the Lord went down to the city gates. Wake up, Deborah, wake up, break out in song. Arise, Barak, take captive your captive, son of Abinoam. The remnant of the nobles came down. The people of the Lord came down to me against the mighty. Some came from Ephraim, whose roots were in Amalek. Benjamin was with the people who followed you. From Machir, captains came down. From Zebulun, those who bear a commander's staff. The princes of Issachar were with Deborah. Yes, Issachar was with Barak, sent under his command into the valley. In the districts of Reuben, there was much searching of heart. Why did you stay among the sheep pens to hear the whistling for the flocks? In the districts of Reuben, there was much searching of heart. Gilead stayed behind the Jordan. And Dan, why did he linger by the ships? Asher remained on the coast and stayed in his coves. The people of Zebulun risked their very lives. So did Naphtali on the terraced fields. Kings came, they fought. The kings of Canaan fought at Ta'anak by the waters of Megiddo. They took no plunder of silver from the heavens. The stars fought from their courses. They fought against Sisera. The river Kishon swept them away. The age-old river, the river Kishon. March on, my soul, be strong. Then thundered the horses' hooves, galloping, galloping go his mighty steeds. Curse Meroz, said the angel of the Lord. Curse its people bitterly, because they did not come to help the Lord against the mighty. So in this section of the storm, she's contrasting two groups of people. Who are the two groups of people? That's it, the people that fought and the people that didn't fight. So when the Lord summons the people and says, I'm going before you, this is the time for action. We need you right now to fight. There's two groups of people. Some of them go and fight, and others don't fight. What most of these, what we're reading, are tribes of Israel, right? So what tribes came? Zebulun, Naphtali, Issachar. How about in Reuben? What did Reuben do? Oh, they had much searching of heart. What were they doing? Well, we have to think about this. We have to study this a little bit. Yeah, let me bring him on. How about Dan? Dan was on the coastline. So what did Dan do? He lingered by the ships. Asher is also over on the coast. What did Asher do? Stay in the coast. Look at verse 23. Curse Meroz. Now Meroz is not one of the tribes of Israel. We don't know exactly who it was. It was probably a city or a village that was very close to the battle. Someone that you would really expect should have fought and should have helped, but they didn't help. And so what happens to them instead? They're cursed. And so where is Meroz today? It's gone. It was cursed. But who cursed it? This is what's interesting. Who cursed it? The angel of the Lord, right? So when the time for action comes, when it's time for God's people to step up, how are they evaluated? What is the judgment made on them in the aftermath of God's victory? Those that heard the word of the Lord and stepped forward, and those that held back. Good lesson in there for us, isn't it? I've got less than 2 minutes. Look at verse the red section there. Here's a section on two women, right? It's a contrast between two women. Most blessed of women be Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite, most blessed of tent-dwelling women. He asked for water, and she gave him milk. In a bowl fit for nobles, she brought him curdled milk. Her hand reached for the tent peg, her right hand for the workman's hammer. She struck Sisera, she crushed his head. She shattered and pierced his temple. At her feet he sank, he fell, there he lay. At her feet he sank, he fell, where he sank, there he fell dead. How do you feel about God using somebody to jab a tent peg through someone's temple? That's not the kind of God we think of, is it? But she is being praised here. Why? Because she destroys the enemy of God. This has to temper our view of God a little bit. That we don't have this domesticated Santa Claus, nice, sweet kind of God that just that never takes much action and just kind of sits back there hoping people will come along with his program. He is a mighty God, and he is a strong God, and his enemies will be destroyed. So right now we pray, for his enemies. When I'm going too long. We see people who oppose Christ and his church flagrantly, and we're seeing it more and more in America. What should our attitude be toward those people? Well, we should pray that they change, and we should witness to them and hope that they change. We don't take it into our own hands to start a crusade. We're not going to start a civil war and fight them and try to have a Christian nation. That's not the way it works. But if they don't repent, what will happen to them? Yeah. I'm sorry. Can I go a couple more minutes? Go. When I was in Iraq, we had I was working for the Army there. I was an individual augmentee, and there was a chaplain there. Better turn the tape off so this doesn't get broadcast. Sorry. Woman, what happens? Look at verse 28. Through the window peered Sisera's mother. Now, where is she? Back in Harashet HaGoyim, right? The enemy's coming for her, and she's waiting for her son to come back. Behind the lattice, she cried out, "Why is his chariot so long in coming? Why is the clatter of his chariots delayed?" The wisest of her ladies answer her. Indeed, she keeps saying to herself, "Are they not finding and dividing the spoils? A woman or two for each man. Colorful garments as plunder for Sisera. Colorful garments embroidered, highly embroidered garments for my neck. All this is plunder." So you see the contrast? The woman who receives praise is Jael because she killed the enemy of God. The woman who is you don't even get to that point. You just get the suspense of it. of how she feels as her son is late coming back, and what's going to happen when she finds out the truth, what happened to her son, and what happened to his whole army, and what kind of people are these? They're assuming, oh, he's out raping the women and stealing the plunder. So you see, they deserve what happens to them. They're enemies of God's people doing evil. But the contrast here is the rejoicing that happens with those who are in the sight of God at the end, and those who, the grief and the sorrow of those who make themselves God's enemies. Does that apply to us today? Absolutely, it does. We don't see the end yet, but this is like an antitype. This is the whole thing kind of in a picture form for us to look at the larger picture. And then the very last section there in blue, so may all your enemies perish, Lord, but may all who love you be like the sun when it rises in its strength. That's the final word of her song. And then the land had peace for 40 years. How long is that? What's important about that?
Generation.
Yeah, another generation. Good. So I hope you see something in this story of the might of God as he delivers his people. Thank you for letting me keep you a little long. I'm sorry about that.
Good lesson.
It is a cool lesson, isn't it?
El Shaddai, El Shaddai, El Elyon Adonai. Eres el mismo de ayer, en tu nombre hay poder. El Shaddai, El Shaddai, Erkamkana Adonai. Te alabaré y te exaltaré, El Shaddai. Tu amor un cordero envió y al hijo de Abraham salvó. Tu poder el mar abrió y un camino apareció. Eres el Dios que siempre ve a todo el quieto esté, y tu fuerza libres los puede hacer. El Shaddai, El Shaddai, El Elyon Adonai. Eres el mismo de ayer, en tu nombre hay poder. El Shaddai, El Shaddai, Erkamkana Adonai. Te alabaré y te exaltaré, El Shaddai. Revelaste que vendría el tiempo del Mesías. La gente no pudo entender lo que Cristo vino a hacer. Tu palabra contenía el plan, pero no querían escuchar. Aún así tu obra cumplió cuando su vida ofreció. El Shaddai, El Shaddai.